Blade Runner Blackout is a sequel to the original Blade Runner movie from 1982 and a prequel to the 2017 Blade Runner 2049. It's a pretty obscure short movie that I found by accident. One day I was chilling, listening to some dope synthwave, and this video popped up on my feed. Perturbator Venga feed Greta Lincoln official video clip. Wow, it's actually 6.5 million views. Didn't notice that before. Anyway, in terms of visuals, it looked absolutely gorgeous at times, but I started seeing strange things during some action scenes. So, I decided to watch the movie, as it's only 15 minutes long. And, how to put it, I discovered that it's one of those movies, movies that are just very artsy and symbolic first and foremost, logic and consistency second, or last, or just with no semblance of logic and consistency. But I think we should start from the beginning. The movie starts with a short intro where an anonymous man walks with a dark sphere in his hand and a glowing red eye. It's a sneak peek of what we are about to see later on. The actual start shows us the already known dystopic future that we saw in the original and a very short description on what happened in between. The story takes place 3 years after the original, and Tyrell Corporation developed a new replicant with a full lifespan expectancy, removing the timed kill switch, which was the main plot point of the original movie, if you didn't watch that one. But a lot of people didn't really like that and started oppressing and hunting those replicants using the data from a registration database. Now, what is a registration database, how easily it is to access, and all the other important world-building questions, well, they are just ignored. Can anyone just go to the internet and check it? Was the database leaked to the public somehow? Who knows? We have nice visuals and symbolism to show, so no, don't think too much. And so the first scene starts. Here we are introduced to our two main characters. Trixie, a female replicant who is being assaulted by some evil, bigoted humans, and Iggy, a combat replicant who comes to save the day. As we can see, Trixie is completely defenseless and practically gave up fighting. She definitely cannot defend herself and just surrender to her assailants. Remember that. Then Iggy drops out of nowhere like Batman and grabs one of those guys and crushes his head with his bare hand, while the other two are just standing and looking, doing nothing. Of course, a big guy suddenly appearing out of nowhere and crushing your friend's skull can scare anyone. That would make sense if not the fact that one of those guys have a gun on him. Actually, look how long it takes until the guy with a gun even reacts to his colleague's skull being crushed. 9.5 seconds. It takes him 9.5 seconds to react and shoot at his opponent. And look, after his first shot he just pulls his gun back, and if you want to argue that he was scared that he shot his friend, I want to remind you that the guy who crushed his head is still in front of him within grabbing range. Of course, you have the standard reaction of freeze, fight or flight, sure, but do you know how dangerously fast street violence is? If you ever watched a footage from a street violence, or just, if you just witnessed it yourself, you should know that almost 10 seconds is basically a death sentence in such situations. Not only Iggy, who supposedly is a combat replicant with military experience, just stands there, hoping that because he looks badass and mean, his enemies will just disperse, Those three thugs do not look like scared little girls who never saw violence, especially if you consider what the movie has shown us in the beginning. So, freezing at the sight of violence is not really a thing that should happen in this circumstance. Anyway, he dispatches them quickly and saves Trixie, as he clearly needs her for something else. The movie then basically splits into two parts, showing us the actions that leads to the titular blackout, and the second part, which shows us the preparation and reasons for each character taking part in it. The movie goes back and forth between those two parts, those two sections, showing us bits of both in succession. We learn that a human sympathizer also joined their cause because he apparently hates his species.
Humans are selfish, stupid liars. But replicants are different. So pure. So perfect.
And he's also simping for Trixie. We can call him a sympathizer. Our sympathizer is called Ren, and he plays a key role in their plan as he's one of the operators of the EMP missile that is supposed to be tested. Iggy's motivation comes from his military background when he discovered that replicants were fighting other replicants in human wars. As for the operation, the plan is to blow up a Tyrell facility with the replicant data storage at the same time as the overridden EMP missile will explode over LA, depriving the entire city of electricity, removing the replicant registry data and destroying the reputation and infrastructure of Tyrell Corporation. First, they start with kidnapping a truck full of petrol in a unconventional way, let's put it like that. And I know that it looks cool and amazing, but do you know how difficult it is to remove someone from their seat with your legs? And for an open window as well. Also, did you just assume that the driver didn't have his seatbelts on? Because having seatbelts would absolutely prevent this weird over-the-top gymnastic maneuver. What would she do then? Would she just, just stick, to him in a very awkward Kama Sutra position? What would she do then? She would just grab him and then they would be sitting like that? Or what would happen then? I love how in the movies the victims of our main protagonists just love to cooperate with them. This guy does nothing that is even instinctive. If someone would just try to get you out of your seat violently, you would just grab anything and try to hold to your place instinctively. In addition, I guess removing the driver violently and suddenly from his seat do not really affect the trajectory of the truck. I guess it may have an autopilot, it's a sci-fi universe, so it is possible, but the movie does not really convey it to us. It doesn't show anything that could lead us to this conclusion. But let's just move on, we have plenty of retarded scenes to go through. They arrive at the complex, but the truck is violently stopped to a halt, and the compound security opens fire. They try to get out of the vehicle, but they are all shot to death. Or at least they would be if the film had any semblance of realism. We see that both Trixie and Iggy get out of the truck with their plot armor on. Iggy is literally just walking normally with no cover, no rush, and akimbo shooting the guards. Of course, no one is able to hit him because the plot needs him to do something important, right? Trixie, on the other hand, takes like 6 seconds or something to remove a mirror from the truck to just throw at a single security guy, which is a massive waste of time when we look what she is capable of later. Then she just casually starts running towards the security, who, I want to remind you, have a completely clear shot at her, but who cares? She then jumps over a tower doing a T-pose and engage in melee. The combat that ensues is absolute nonsense. The security here are just red shirts who are bodies to be pushed around. There's like one scene that look at least a bit more realistic when she approach a guy doing a, left-right dashes to confuse him. Of course, if anyone would be equipped with an automatic weapon, that would... never mind, it wouldn't help. Those scenes are already so extremely contrived that there's no point speculating. Or, well, look at this one. The magic of this scene is the fact that she's in the center of the frame and in the most illuminated part of the shot. The very moment you stop paying attention to her and look what the other guys around are doing, the entire scene falls absolutely apart. The guy on the left just aims at her while standing in place, refuses to shoot or just walk back a couple of steps to get out of her grabbing range. And look at this guy. He just walked towards her with no weapons, with no aggressive intention. We don't see anything from him that would suggest that he wants to stop her at all. He's here literally only to be a punching bag for our protagonist. The combat sequence ends when Trixie is doing a gymnastic show-off on a car, and everyone of course shoots at the car instead at her center of mass, because I guess we need sparks at this scene, so who cares. At the end of the gymnastic show-off, she finally gets shot while falling and looking at a white bird. You can clearly see that, this scene was done purely for artistic value, probably to represent an angel falling from the sky, as there is a, white feather falling next to her at the end. We will touch upon the scene later on. Anyway, Iggy managed to unblock the passage and blow up the facility at the same time the nuclear missile exploded in the stratosphere, causing an EMP wave over all of LA. A massive blackout ensues, wiping out the data storage and, in the long run, destroying Tyler Corporation. Hundreds, if not thousands of people die. The end. And that was Blade Runner Blackout, a short movie that was made by people who really wanted to make a piece of art while ignoring any type of logical consistency. Don't get me wrong, I will give it credit where credit is due. The visuals are absolutely stunning. There are shots that you could easily take and use as a wallpaper on your PC. People who made the visuals did an absolutely fantastic job using the color palette. I'm not really a visual artist, nor do I have any kind of professional knowledge about that, but look at this shot, for example. The use of the blue and, the very soothing and calm, which is appropriate. Or this one with darker reddish and brownish colors, with road lights flickering in and giving a certain vibe to the shot. Trixie had an aura of a mystery with a very subtle dose of creepiness. The colors only amplify this vibe. Or look at this one. Or this one. They all look amazing and are very fitting to the mood of the scenario they are presented in. The facial animations are also mostly fantastically done. You can clearly guess what a character mood is purely by looking at their expression. Even some micro expressions are well executed, giving you some, additional food for thought about characters' motivations and, all of that stuff. What is very sad, however, is the entire execution. By watching this movie, you can clearly see that the plot was more of an afterthought or just a very general template that they were forced to use instead of, an integral part of the movie. The fact that, the action scenes are made purely for the cool factor, anyone that is not the main protagonist is an incompetent buffoon, and the oversaturation of philosophy and symbolism over other parts of the movie shows us that, quite clearly. The entire melee nonsense in front of the facility is just to show you how Trixie came from being a directionless, subdued person to a dedicated and full of life. Just to show her die in a very artistic and dramatic way, with visions of a white bird and crystals of smashed window, and a falling feather presenting the idea of a falling angel, which connects with her previous dialogue about replicants going to heaven. And her transformation from a defenseless and subdued person in the first scene to an absolute killing machine later is very unnatural and sudden. I know what they were trying to do here, showing a transformation of motivation and all of that, but there is no real effort to convey it to the viewer, and to be honest, there is not enough time in this movie. Especially that out of 15 minutes of it, 3 minutes are just for the end credits. I know that mixing artistic design with symbolism and philosophy and with hard logic it's really difficult for people, as it requires two completely different type of personality and mindset to execute. But it's not like it's impossible. There is another cyberpunk show that does that absolutely perfectly. Ghost in the Shell is a perfect mix of both worlds and is seriously one of the most underrated piece of visual media out there. But that's a story for a different video. Blade Runner Blackout is a good representation where emotional visions take first seat and ignore the other big part of the movie, story and logical consistency, putting the art over the substance.